2, 1. Good afternoon. This is Animal on Control. Welcome to the voice chat. These calls are recorded for uploading to social media, and by joining a call, you are consenting to being recorded. Anyone wishing to join a call should email me at animaluncontrol@gmail.com, and I will reply with instructions. Today's topics: more bread bashing, medical alert dog fails, repeat offenders, and herding dog fails. Joining me is Chef. What is up?
Hey, not much. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Oh, there's quite a bit up here. We got a lot to talk about. Because I didn't do one last week, really, because I was too busy, and plus, I guess the week before, not much happened. I guess typically we'll go over what's happened in the past week or so, but seems like a lot has come up recently, just in the past, 5 or 6 days that I find very interesting. So, and I don't know if we'll even cover it all, but anything that doesn't get done, we'll just bump to the next one. I'm going to get a screen share going. Yeah, let's take a look at this. Oh, wait a second. Yeah, that's what I want to share. That's what I want to share. So you can see this. This is our favorite service dog handler, one of them. She barely goes out in public. There actually is, talk about banning breads. There actually is such a thing as barley bread. There's all kinds of recipes. In fact, this one has 4.5 stars out of 5. So banning this is going to be difficult. So yeah, she barely goes out in public. But the thing is, obviously she means barely, but if she hardly ever goes out, what does she need the service dog for?
Quickies.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah. What indeed? And then there was this one. I like this one. There was a band. We have a 3-year-old male XL bully. He would love a walking buddy instead of everyone judging or shouting. I have a banned bread indeed. In fact, somebody pointed out in the last, maybe I showed this last time. Somebody pointed out in the last, comment section of the last chat that there's actually a band called Bread. I guess they're from California. They're sort of like a soft rock, easy listening band from the 1970s. So funny, I don't know if I'd ever heard of them, but in any case, you want to check out the band Bread. The other thing I wanted to do too was, I hate cars. He always has all these. He's a frequent commenter, and he always has all these asks, and I never really seem to get to him because it kind of things, but he's such a loyal commenter. He wanted us to cover dogs in Halloween costumes. So here you have dogs in Halloween costumes. So you have the hot dog and the serial killer. No, that's
Chucky.
That's Chucky. That's right, Chucky. And this stuff here. I mean, this kind of thing on the lion outfit is pretty funny. This kind of thing. I mean, it goes sort of lends itself to the lunacy of these people. But personally, I find this harmless. I guess they're part of the mutt matrix, but they're not really it's really not that toxic. Like somebody dressing their dog up like a hot dog does not make anyone else's life worse. So I don't really find this kind of stuff that interesting. There's some, mild entertainment value to it. So shout out to I Hate Cars. I think he also mentioned if I was going to start doing live streams, because again, these are pre-recorded. Like today is Saturday, the 21st? So it'll probably get posted tomorrow or the day after. And I do that for a few reasons. One is I like to clean it up a bit. Sometimes if there's a long pause, I'll edit it out. I frequently do that. For example, one time I gulped some water down the wrong pipe and went into a minute-long coughing fit. So I was able to trim that out. That kind of thing. Sometimes something will show on the screen that we don't want everybody to see, so we can either edit that out or superimpose something over it. That kind of thing. Because I want a good. I try to get the best end state I can given my resources, which are basically non-existent. So yeah, but I see where he's coming from though, because probably people would like to, in the sidebar chat when you do ask questions, like, interject something. So I can see where they would appreciate that. But anybody who takes issue with the content is free to get their money back. That's what I used to tell my hikers when I was leading hikes. It's like, yeah, just report it to a corporate and you get your money back, figuring that we didn't charge anybody to attend those events. So anyway, yes, we had more bread bashing, but the other thing I really wanted to get into, and I know this is a favorite topic of mine, yours, and ours, are, well, service dogs generally, but medical alert dogs specifically, because I always found, even when I first realized they were a thing, just like everything else positive promoted about dogs, I believe it's either it's made up or wildly exaggerated. Like there's not much veracity to it. So in any case, I was reading this was on the Reddits, and somebody was posting about diabetic alert dogs. And this is actually a really good thread. If folks can read this or maybe comment on it, I commented also. And it was it was Tom Quixote. Actually, yeah, he was on the old Discord. He actually posted, shout out to him, he posted the link to this NPR article that we're going to do a deep dive into. But this is even just on itself, it's really interesting comment thread, because even had folks posting, went into why, really this is a scam. Okay. You've got scammers willing to take your money and risk your health and safety. Absolutely. Such people, unfortunately, will always exist. It's also true. But this is a kind of thing you have where something is totally unregulated. And it's not just service dogs, it's dogs, period. Dogs are literally the only thing, not just they're the only animal, the only thing, period, that can't be restrained or bound in any way ever. Like I said, it's anarcho-tyranny. I think you too is a good point. People who really, really want to believe the dog can magically help them and save them. And that's what it is. It's like, again, this is a religion. Probably many people, they believe that dogs are divine creatures and they just sort of magically, help them out. So that's a really good point also. And it makes a point too. It's sort of like a divining rod where you hold a stick and the stick will point in the ground if there's something of value down there, like gold nuggets or whatever. And I pointed out, and my points were, the one point I made was, the service dog scenario really has nothing to do with helping disabled people. Everybody needs to realize what this is about. Okay, or even able-bodied people with manageable health problems, right? Really what it's about is it's about maintaining and promoting Fido's reputation, right? They're an important part of the Mutt Matrix propaganda stack. And I think that's why, because some people are wondering, like, well, why are you guys picking on them? But this is very, very important because, yeah, the service dogs, such as they are used to, promote and maintain Fido's reputation. I remember I think it was Tesla. We haven't heard much from him recently, but one point he made that he was stated that, anytime you try to point out the downsides of dogs in society, what do they come back with? They being, the dog nutters, like, oh, I'm a service dog. I'm a service dog hater. I'm a service dog. So I think that discrediting these would be a very important, a very significant propaganda win for our side, because this is a political issue. So if you can at least in this case, you partially discredit the adversary, I think that goes a long way in advancing our interests.
Because people have gone for years just not challenging the service dog realm. They just accept that, oh, service dogs help blind people. Oh, they can sniff diabetes. And only recently are people starting to really scrutinize and challenge that.
Yep, which is good, which
Mhm.
is good, because people are starting to wake up and ask questions, which is good, because this gets into, because some people might say, like I said, this is actually bigger than just the service dog thing itself, because if you can question, what the mutt worshippers, insist is that, oh, dogs are just so useful, right? Like they more than make up for that pile of dead kids over there, or the fact that you can't sleep in your house, or whatever mutt problem you've encountered or intersected with. So yeah, and then Tom made another good point too, and this is also, it's just strange where people have all kinds of problems, but then instead of going out and finding real solutions, they are convinced that the dog must be the answer somehow. Right. And this is a very important point, too, particularly if you want to understand the nutter mentality. He touches on something very, very important here. Is one of their, assertions is that dogs make everything better. So, having trouble, I don't know if you're having trouble with your home budget, you can't make ends meet, get a dog. Of course, that's not going to improve anything, but or maybe you have a dog and you hate the dog, it's driving you crazy. What do? Well, you get another dog, because dog is the answer to every problem, including health problems and disabilities. So yeah, it's like blind dogs, diabetic dogs, home security dogs, need exercise dogs, lonely dogs. Children need to learn responsibility dogs. Children need friends. Children need to learn how to read. Dogs are the answer to everything, according to our adversary, which is really nuts. It's not really an argument against dog ownership generally, but again, my premise is that really owning any pet is a luxury and a privilege. It's not like an essential that's going to solve all your problems. It's sold almost like, what do they call that, back in the 1800s, before we had any real regulation on medicine. You'd have the snake oil salesman. They would sell this stuff, and probably it was just like alcohol, some like whiskey with a bunch of maybe herbs in it, but it just cured everything, headaches, indigestion, cancer, skin rashes, whatever your problem was. Like, take a slug and it'll fix you right up. And that's what this is dogs, service dogs, are the new snake oil.
It's a pseudoscience. It could be categorized as a pseudoscience because it only has benefits if you want it to have benefits.
Right. Well, it's what they call a confirmation bias.
Yes.
Because they think, well, and we'll probably get into this because I want to dig into that NPR article, but it's sort of like, okay, you're diabetic and your dog nudges you.
Then what?
And then okay, so what do? Well, you check your blood sugar, maybe it's a little high, but you wonder, like, why did the dog nudge you? Was it because your blood sugar was a little high, or was it he just nudging you because he wanted, a snack? He was like, he wanted, like, open up the garage. I want to get into the cat litter box and, chow down. It could have been for all kinds of reasons. So, that's the kind of thing. How do you know that's what the dog is doing? Like, is it really warning you of an impending event, or is it just a dog? It's a dog being a dog. You don't really know. So in any case, the article that Tom linked to was this one here. This is an NPR. The hope and hype of diabetic alert dogs. Now, one takeaway from this is, when I was in college, I took a journalism course, but it wasn't a credit course. It was more like a workshop. And one of the takeaways is what they teach journalists is that when most people read something like this, right, a magazine article or a newspaper article, is the only read the first couple of paragraphs or even the first few sentences. So what you do is you want to make your point up front, right? Like, for example, if there's some industrial accident, you say, okay, explosion at accordion factory kills 47, right? Because that's what you want to, and then you digress into why and how and all what and all that kind of stuff as you go down. But that's the news that you want to convey, right? That's the message. So here, and you see this often in this space because you look at this, you're like, okay, I guess superficially you think, okay, what are they? They're trying to actually, debunk at least diabetic alert dogs or indicate that they're a scam. But it starts out with like the first few, paragraphs. It's all about how wonderful the dog is, right? Praising the dog. Right. So you say, okay, a few minutes. So this woman who is a type 1 diabetic takes her diabetic alert dog to church. Right. So it's got all this warm, fuzzy, Methodist church. She walks in with her dog, a stout cream colored golden retriever named Rocky. The congregants greet Rocky like an old friend because everybody just loves the Rock, don't they? So they said, how are you? You're a sweetheart. One man, and so are you. The man tells Gibson, it's like, oh, this is so sweet. I'm going to need an insulin shot, and I'm not a diabetic, right? So they get into like how wonderful the dog is and how everybody loves him. And he's just the most wonderful thing on earth. He's just this perfect fur angel sent from heaven to a church, no less, to bless everyone, right? But then as you read down, so welcomes the congregant, he's an honorary church member, settles in. So at least the dog is well behaved. I mean, I guess he's not disrupting anyone's like church going experience. Although if I were another congregant, I would be uncomfortable with this because I'm thinking, okay, you're going to church to commune with God, but am I going to be distracted by this mutt barking or crapping on the floor or just being a dog, essentially? So, and it goes on. We love Rocky, right? And we love Peggy from the pulpit. So she's one of.
They mentioned the dog first.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's right, exactly. But see, that's what they're getting out of the way. The purpose of this article is not to debunk fake diabetic alert dogs or tune the public into a scam, which is what this is. No, it starts out with all this like pro-dog propaganda, right? So this person, the dog owner, has type 1 diabetes, difficult to manage autoimmune disease. People with disease face a constant struggle to control the amount of sugar in their bloodstream. If it gets too low, it can lead to seizures, loss of consciousness, or death. So this is a pretty serious medical condition. And Rocky was there to help. He's a diabetic alert dog, specially trained to smell dangerous changes in someone's blood sugar and alert them with a paw or nudge before it becomes a medical emergency. And he was a gift from the church community, right? So they did a fundraiser, chili lunch, silent auction, and a concert for the raise of $15,000 to buy this dog. Okay. And there they are outside, but you see this, the dog is sniffing at the grass, but he's distracted. Like right here, even if you look at this photograph, he should be focused on her, not like whatever, because probably maybe some other dog peed there and it's like scoping it out. So that's a big red flag also. So it goes down. It's like, okay, harder to recognize was going. So she was finding out to look into a diabetic alert service dog. Okay, but while Gibson obviously loves Rocky, he doesn't provide the service she and her neighbors paid for, unfortunately. So now that we're deep into this, now they're getting to, okay, there's some real problems with this. Unfortunately, that may be par for the course. The diabetic alert dog industry is unstandardized and largely unregulated. And the science on a dog's ability to reliably sniff out blood sugar changes is at best inconclusive. So really, there's no real proof that these things work. I mean, again, you have correlation. I know a while back I was bashing, police sniffer dogs. Well, really, it's just the use of police dogs generally, because that's similar. So the police use dogs to sniff out contraband like drugs or explosives and whatnot. And it was a Supreme Court case. It was Florida v. Harris. And evidence was submitted to the court that the police sniffer dogs were wrong. They were wrong up to 80% of the time. I'm like, that's terrible. And we can get into how these things are, kind of things or something like this should be regulated. And look at this now, I did that session with Kidder like 6 months ago. We were looking at these heavy duty dog crates. Like if you want to crate your pit bull, you've got this Fort Knox dog crates. I'm still getting pop-up ads for these things. Unbelievable. But so she was influenced by the online marketing of Diabetic Alert Dogs of America, the Nevada company that sold Rocky. They have their stories on there about the dogs they've trained and the people they place them with, and it seemed sound, right? Because no producer of anything is going to lie about what they're producing, right? Like,
They've never done that before.
No, nobody does that, So if you research diabetic alert dogs, you find a lot of hope for their role in managing type 1 diabetes, and you'll find a fair amount of hype, right? Television news stories about the dogs often uncritically accept their abilities and that refers back to another, basic premise of dog culture is that the dog's always right. So the dog is going to sniff out your diabetes, period. Right? Because a dog can't do anything wrong. That's why, that's also another reason why victims of dog attacks are frequently blamed. You think, what did the 2-year-old really do wrong to deserve being completely dismembered? And it's like, well, I must have done something because, the dog's always right. There's no bad dogs. So anyways, using words like incredible and amazing in fundraising campaigns, would-be alert dog owners position them as critical solutions to their disease. So NPR reviewed nearly 500 GoFundMe campaigns that mentioned diabetic alert dog. More than a third use phrases like lifesaver or life-saving. Dog training companies make similar claims. Several of them have faced lawsuits, wonder why, or complaints recently from consumers who bought diabetic alert dogs that say they don't work. In Texas, this is interesting because you don't hear about this too often. A group of more than a dozen dog buyers sued a trainer for fraud and won a judgment of $800,000. In Virginia, the Attorney General sued a service dog vendor after customer complaints about its dogs, which were marketed as backed by science and 100% effective, I'm sure. So the Attorney General claimed the company's service dogs by Warren Retrievers deceived consumers about the animal's abilities and cost, in many cases selling a $25,000 pet. But hey, I'm sure it was worth every penny. Company lawyer Glenn Franklin tells NPR that his client denies the allegations and calls a lawsuit baseless. What's baseless is their claim that these dogs are any good. He stands by the backed by science claim and adds, a fully trained dog is 100% effective. Really?
False advertising.
Yeah, I remember, my first monologue on this was a service dog issue. I related the story when I was working in New York. Well, it was a long time ago. This is late 90s, probably before this whole, well, really, this whole mutt mania really caught on. And I saw a guide dog for blind people walk a blind man right into a scaffold, like bam. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there's one fail. God, it was terrible. So yeah, they're not 100% of it. It's impossible. So So here's the problem, though. The reason it might take a lawsuit to fight back into perceived or actual shortcomings in alert dogs is the trainers and dogs generally aren't required by any authority or regulator to perform to any particular standards. That's the whole problem with the service mutt issue. There are no standards or oversight or restraint at all. Nobody, not just the service dog handlers, but even the service dog trainers, nobody anywhere in this supply chain, from the producer to the consumer, need to prove anything to anybody. It's all based on hearsay.
How did no one see the flaws or the loopholes in that? Did seriously not a single person say, well, if there's no proofing system, what's stopping a faker from lying about those two stupid questions?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you can dig back into the ADA, the ADA was passed in its initial form in the early 90s, 91, I think. And back then, I guess the thinking was like, yeah, why not have, proofing system or standards for this thing? I think the thinking was like almost very few people did it. That's why, like, for example, when I saw that guide dog one time, I was staring at him just because I'd never seen one before. Right? It was almost like watching an elephant walk down the street. It was so unusual because, I mean, now they're everywhere, and yeah, 99% of them are completely fake. But back then, it was just, I mean, the whole. I guess maybe it's tough for people, say, under 40 to realize or that, back then the whole paradigm, the whole attitude towards dogs in society was very different. They were dogs, they were just pets, right? So it's like, okay, you've got maybe a few people have dogs that train to help them, so we'll make some accommodation for them. But it's not like today where you go into Walmart and there's like 4 people walking their dogs in there. Like nothing, that's a very recent thing, like in the last 10 years or so. But you're right. I mean, I guess it's an unintended consequence. They didn't think at the time. It's like, okay, yeah, there's a loophole here. There's a big opportunity for abuse, but nobody saw it that way. It actually had to become a problem before anybody took notice. Like in my case, I was like, what's going on here? And then I looked, and most of these people, even a lot of service dog people, probably haven't even read the law. Very few people know what it actually says. But yeah, you dig into it. So anyway, while Rocky was marketed as a certified alert dog, the certification came only from the company that sold the dog. So, I mean, yeah, like any kind of certification really should come from a third party. And doesn't necessarily need to be the government. I know most people are familiar with Underwriters Laboratories. Underwriters Laboratories, I think it's actually it's under the auspices of the insurance industry, but what they do is they test various consumer products for safety. Like, so to make sure that, okay, like your toaster in normal use won't burn your house down, right? That's the kind of thing they do. And you can watch, much of this stuff it'll have that, okay, this device has been certified by Underwriters Laboratories, not General Electric or whoever made the kitchen device, right? So you have some kind of third party certification. It doesn't necessarily have to be the government, but somebody like that's not really interested in the outcome makes the certification. So, but here that you don't have that. There's no third party certification at all for at any point in this process. So soon after Gibson got Rocky, it was clear to her that he wasn't cut out to be a service dog. in public, especially in the windy high country of North Carolina. Gibson says Rocky is easily frightened by common noises such as umbrellas opening and motorcycles passing, and can't work as an alert dog while he's scared. I'm thinking, like, is most medical equipment like fearful? Like, do wheelchairs have panic attacks? I don't think so.
I mean, they might.
I don't know. I really doubt it somehow. So the first day that I had him out, the wind blew up. He got so scared he couldn't run fast enough to try to hide. So that's what happens is when something, and it's like, let's say the wind blew up. Like a gust of wind is not like a bomb going off. I mean, it happens. I mean, if you live on Earth, the wind blows, right? So it was just pure fear. So you hear a lot of this too, and when people are referring to dangerous dogs, like, oh, he was scared. What the hell gets scared that easily? I mean, most of the time with dangerous dogs, it probably is like pit bulls attack, not out of fear, but out of, enjoyment. They like it. So it's just pure fear. So that was in April. She's had to sign a series of disclaimers that is a condition of getting the dog. One document said Rocky met her expectations as a diabetic alert dog, even though she only had 2 days experience with him. So there's no warranty on these things either. Like once you sign off on it, like once you take possession, it's yours, period. So yeah, there's no third-party certification. There's no warranty on these things. So this is good too. Another document said Rocky has a free will and wasn't guaranteed to do what Gibson and her community paid for, alert her to blood sugar changes. So what he's saying is kind of like we saw the dog sniffing around. Like it's it's not a mechanical device. It's an animal, and it's just going to, it's just going to be a dog being a dog. It's going to sniff around, run away in fear, hide, all these kind of things you wouldn't normally expect medical equipment to do. So right away it says, okay, it's not even, there's no guarantee either. Well, as per above, there's no warranty. So you're buying this thing and it's saying, look, it's not even really expected to work. So I answered everything because I was so excited. He was there and I was positive. I was hoping everything was going to be wonderful. And then after the dust settled, everything wasn't wonderful. One paper she signed said that Rocky wasn't guaranteed to perform any specific action at any specific time. So if she has, like if her blood sugar goes dangerously high or low, it's like the dog may or may not do something about it. So the sweeping disclaimer might sound at odds with an expensive purchase that people trust with their lives. That's what's important, because diabetes is a very serious medical condition and it has to be managed properly. But research on alert dogs suggests it might also be a reality check about the abilities of diabetic alert dogs in general. So here's what does the science say when you actually study these things? Okay, so they said to track the owners believe the dogs would prove more accurate than their glucose monitor devices. That didn't happen. Okay, overall, they were really not that reliable or accurate. Of 14 dogs in the study, only 3 performed better than statistical chance. Okay, and that's similar to what another researcher reported in 2016. The dogs in the study detected low blood sugar levels events 36% of the time. Now that's abysmal. Imagine if your phone only worked 36% of the time. Maybe that's it. The thing with nutters, maybe their brains only work 36% of the time. They also had false positives, and that's a problem also. But that's the thing is, even a case like this is like you need to, if the dog reacts somehow, you still need to check yourself, because how you react to a low blood sugar event is very different than how you react to a high blood sugar event. Okay, this is really good. Only 12% of the dog's alerts happened during actual low blood sugar events. So they're getting nudged, but the dog is alerting them to something that's not happening. It's kind of like your neighbor's yard barker. What's a watchdog? But there's nobody's trespassing. There's not going on. But it's just barking anyway. This is the same kind of thing. It's going to report like an event when none is happening. It's a false positive. And that's part of the problem with the way they train these things is dogs are typically trained using positive reinforcement, like food, right? So if the dog reports an event, it's going to get a snack. So what's the incentive? Well, the incentive is to report as many, incidents as possible. Not necessarily to do so accurately, because what if they do a false positive? They wear a shock collar, do they get a jolt? Probably not. So I'm sure it's probably all or almost all positive reinforcement. So it says some dog owners overestimate their beloved dogs. And that's the thing too, is these are not medical equipment. These are pets, right? These are pets or a family member, right? Overestimate their beloved dog's talents, perhaps as they would a favored grandchild. People might remember when the dog is accurate much more easily than they would remember when the dog was not accurate. So you've got, that bias there. You find a person who believes very strongly in their dog when in fact the dog's right half the time. Okay, so it's a confirmation bias. Research also contradicted what some believe or hope, that the dogs, can be a good safety net for those who worry about their blood sugar dropping as they sleep. So in other words, the dog would alert them. Some parents have turned to the dog to safeguard their children during the night. I wouldn't trust myself or anybody to a mutt. No effing way. So the accuracy just plummeted during the night. First of all, dogs have to sleep too. Obviously, a dog cannot work 24/7. There's not much other research, but what does exist isn't more encouraging. So there was a 2015 study, a 2019 study did find good performance, but involved possible conflicts of interests. Oh, yeah, both studies were co-written by the dog's trainers or suppliers.
It's like how the tobacco industry released all of those stupid articles about how smoking doesn't cause cancer. It's like, of course the tobacco industry is going to release reports
well, the
about
thing
this.
is, you want, like we were talking about, like say with certification, this has to be done by disinterested third parties. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be the government, but you don't want anything that's produced by someone with an interest in the outcome is pretty sketchy by definition. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in it. So, okay, authors of both articles tell NPR the arrangements did not amount to conflicts and didn't bias the studies. Well, of course not, because like no dog person would ever lie, would they?
Never. Oh, they've never done that.
They've never done that. Well, again, but that's the problem with just the service dogs in general, is that I guess you have the assumption like nobody would lie about a disability to get special treatment, would they? Well, what kind of person would do that? Let me think. Oh, a dog person would do that. That's the kind of person, because see, this is like the way this is handled is really completely different than how it should be, right? Like if I would really, it's the opposite. I would never believe anything these people say unless they had just like drop dead ironclad proof, right? They would need literally a mountain of evidence to convince me of at least of anything positive. So anyway, this Peoples, who owns Diabetic Alert Dogs of America, trained nearly 700 dogs, and more than 9 out of 10 of his clients are satisfied. But satisfied how? Like satisfied that the dog is actually, alerting to the medical condition as indicated, or satisfied perhaps in some other way? So he says issues like Gibson's, where a dog can't perform well in public, represent the toughest part of training an alert dog. Okay, and does his best to train the dog to work in the owner's environment. So they can bring that dog right to my doorstep. Okay, this is like if the dog is malfunctioning, they're going to try to fix it, right? So he'll try to set it right. Okay, so but this other person, I got another one of these diabetics with one of these dogs, has a long-running dispute and now helps run a Facebook group dedicated to complain about this company. She said the replacement dog guarantee can mean little when there's a child involved. Oh, the child bonds with the dog. As I'm talking about, well, probably many, because really only a dog person would turn to a dog for a solution in the first place.
Yes.
Like if it were you or I, this would be like the last thing we would do. Or even most people. But these are people who are very pro dog. They're probably at least like on the, who was it? Four-Legged Plague. You should check him out. He did a video a couple of years ago, sort of ranking the nutters, like sort of different levels of nuttery on a 1 to 5 scale. So probably anybody who would even consider this is probably like at least a 3 to begin with, right? So they're going to be satisfied in the sense of like, okay, get this diabetic alert dog. Now it doesn't do shit for the diabetes, but it's an enjoyable dog. So they're probably satisfied that much, even though they could have gotten just a puppy from a breeder for 1/10 the cost. But here we have, okay, so the child bonds with a dog, and then you have to choose whether or not to send the dog back and start over again, right? Because remember, the dog is a family member. You wouldn't just give away a family member, would you?
But I'd give away a dog.
Sooner rather than later. So the thing is, so the kid bonds with the dog, and so now basically they're like stuck with it because they don't want to let Fido go, and I respect that, but that's another problem with this, right? So she got her dog in 2016. They paid $11,000. So Hachi was supposed to paw if her blood sugar was out of range. Hachi was never a reliable alerter. I got into his face and asked for the paw. Sure, he would give me his paw, but what's the point of an alert if you have to ask for it first? It's like a smoke alarm. It says, well, it'll alert to smoke, but only if you press the button while your house is on fire. Like, that doesn't really do you any good. So there's never any link to the scent of my breath and whether my blood sugar was high or whether my blood sugar was low. And that touches on another issue with this, and with this whole service dog issue, is that it's a dog. It's a dumb dog, and it's not aware of, do dogs really understand the implications of like an insulinic crisis? Hyperinsulinic or hypoinsulinic? No, they do not. They do not. They're just oblivious. I mean, sure, they do have a good sense of smell. Personally, they smell terrible, but their sense of smell is very good. But the thing is, they're not smart enough to process the information, right? It's not like for example, an electronic device will say, okay, your blood sugar is this. Like if it's a 42, that's catastrophically low. You need to like eat a donut immediately. Same thing, if it's a 300, you need a shot right now. But the dog's not going to indicate that. The dog's really not doing much. So anyway, the trainer agreed to refund some of her money. It was conditioned on her signing a non-disclosure agreement, barring her from discussing the company with others. Okay, he says he required the agreement because he didn't want it publicly known that he was providing a refund. Well, that's probably partially true. So she refused to sign, leaving several $1,000s on the table. But the thing is, this stuff really isn't reported because our mainstream media doesn't want to report this stuff. I mean, kudos, even though this is presented in a very bad way. Going back to what I indicated in the beginning, like, how does this thing start? Oh, it's all about how wonderful the dog is, which is really all most people are going to read, and they know this. They know this, right? Or they should know. I mean, if they've taken college level journalism classes or even work with people who have, they should know that. So, more from dozens of people's, okay. So anyway, he's heard from dozens of people's clients. Some have struggled with dogs that are too aggressive or have other problems. Some are happy, but again, they're probably happy because they just adore the dog, even though it's not doing anything useful. So anyway, found liberal, there's a paradox here. Well, they found little evidence that the dogs can reliably sniff out blood sugar changes. They've encountered a kind of paradox. People who get alert dogs tend to do better with their diabetes. Now, the thing is, that's correlation, not necessarily causation, because you think that, okay, somebody who seeks out, first of all, if they're going to seek out some kind of solution to the problem, are probably more on top of it, even if it's a really bad solution, like the mutt. They may just be more engaged, maybe checking their blood glucose much more often than they used to. So the dog sort of, I got the dog. What does it do? Well, it sort of reminds me that I have a health problem. Yeah, I'm sure that's really useful.
So does that imply that they also need to use a blood glucose monitor even if they have the diabetes sniffing mutt?
Oh yeah. Well, because the thing is that the dog, and I've known people who were, diabetics, and the thing is you can have, you want your blood sugar to stay in a healthy range, right? And it's expressed as a number. So, like, if you have a hypo glycemic crisis, meaning that your blood sugar is catastrophically low, like you could just pass out, right? And usually that's managed by eating something sweet. But yeah, you need the monitor to tell you exactly what it is. Are you high or are you low, and by how much? That's very important. The dog doesn't do that. The dog is just saying, hey, I smelled something different. Something in your body changed, right? It might be that something's going on with a diabetes, or maybe you just farted, like, who knows.
I was just about to say that, like, maybe you just ripped ass and the dog wanted to get a treat for that.
Yeah, well, that's the
It satiated its appetite.
Yeah, the same thing with the police sniffer dogs. Like, all the sniffer dog is indicating is that it smells something interesting. Yeah, maybe they've got a backpack full of TNT, or maybe it's just a cat turd or a candy wrapper or something else, the dog, or a pair of dirty socks, right? It could be anything that the dog finds interesting. So yeah, I mean, they still need to use a monitor. Now they have like these continuous monitors that you wear that actually, because the old school was you had to prick your finger, you'd put some blood on the strip, stick the strip into the monitor, and the monitor would tell you, well, the really old school, like back in the 70s, it would change color to tell you what was going on. It was just a chemical reaction. And then I guess in the 90s, they came out with the electronic monitor. So you put the strip in the electronic monitor, it would tell you real time right there what your blood sugar was. But now they have these wearable monitors that tell you in real time what it is. So you can notice at a glance, and I'm sure they probably alarms go off if it gets catastrophically high or low, which is essentially what this thing is doing, or alleged to do. So, well, it wraps it up too, is at the end, it finishes up with more dog propaganda. Sitting at her kitchen table with Rocky at her feet, Gibson says the dog has helped her feel less alone with her disease. So that is that. But here's the thing, you go up, I mean, these things are accurate less than half the time, according to studies. And I think what I figure is I've done so, even when they said at the rate the vendor promised 80% of the time, I've done some due diligence on this also, and just on medical alert dogs in general, not just a diabetic alert dogs. And like, yeah, your best case is about the dog's going to be right about 80% of the time. But that's best case. It's not nominal. It's not average, right? It's not certainly not worst case. And it's not saying, well, okay, 100% of them are right 80% of the time, or 80% of them are right 100% of the time. 80% is far and away your best case scenario. Most of them are accurate way less than that. And the thing with that is that even if 80% were the minimum, that still would not meet the standards set for, well, not just medical devices, but really any consumer product. Like I said, what if your car only started 80% of the time? It would be a junker, essentially, right? It's not reliable. And this is important because it's interesting how this is being framed. Like, okay, you're saying, oh, you have this really serious disease and it's a life or death situation, and the solution is to get something totally unreliable. What sense does that make? It's a non sequitur is what it is, right? Like if diabetes were no big deal, like if it were, I don't know, like eczema or something, though, that would be one thing. But I mean, a bad enough diabetic crisis can kill somebody. It's a very serious matter.
It could happen at night while the dog is sleeping, and it's just like they're screwed. They don't have any other option. And
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, if they had one of those wearable, I mean, I think definitely today with the wearable monitors, this is completely like outdated. It's completely void.
it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. Well, because we're talking about dog people. They don't have brains. That's why they seek solutions like this. Here's something else too, because I always talk about when you get into the dog space, when you say, like, remember when Colleen and I were talking, I guess it was about a month or so ago, about, well, pretty much that conversation was restricted to dangerous dogs, dog attacks, and so forth. And, but we both made the point that nothing else can get away with something like that. No other animal, no person, nothing. It's like it's a doggy double standard. And the same kind of thing applies here. Like if anything else were performing like this, boom, gone. Nobody would, the government wouldn't even have to ban it because nobody would use it, literally. It's only popular because it's a dog. That's it. That's all this is about. I want to reiterate because again, make the point that service dogs are a key component of the Mutt Matrix propaganda stack. They're used to, essentially, protect and promote Fido's reputation. Most service dogs. But the short answer is when somebody pulls that shit, people say, well, what do I say? Tell them it's a scam. It's a scam. Okay. And it's a scam on everybody. It's like, first of all, because again, they're allowed by law to bring these things everywhere, basically overriding all kinds of health and safety laws, because even like the best alert dog is still a shit mutt, right? It's still like contaminating, indoor public spaces, right? Particularly where food is served or sold. So it's bypassing all these food safety laws, violating people's rights of association, because they're saying essentially, that, well, if you ever want to leave your house, you're forced to associate with mutts because of this, right? And personally, I resent that, but it's so they're bypassing a bunch of laws. They're violating everybody's rights, and they're scamming sick people. This is an epic disaster. It's a complete dumpster fire, no matter how you look at it. It's a disaster. I want to segue into something similar because pursuant to the doggy double standard, I wanted to look at something kind of like this and how that is perceived and managed in society. I don't know if you had any more thoughts on this article specifically.
Yeah, it's like we're having this discussion and we're giving these people better advice than these service dog trainers will ever give, because we don't trust dogs with this kind of serious medical condition, but we're not saying that just because we despise dogs. It's like that's a part of it, but a part of it is also like they don't work.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like we're giving you guys good advice. Get one of those wearable glucose monitors, because that works 24/7, unlike a mutt, and the blood glucose monitor also doesn't require $15,000 training. It's designed to work, but a dog is designed to eat shit and kill things.
Yeah, it doesn't crap on the floor. It doesn't bark.
Doesn't get scared by wind.
Doesn't get scared by wind. It doesn't hump your leg, But, pursuant to this, I had a thought the other day. I wanted to look at, I often remember a while back I did that monologue on, because I was trying to juxtapose, for example, like when the family pet kills, how that is perceived when the family pet is a dog versus when it's not a dog. And you can see there's a huge double standard there, right? Because when the dog kills, right, it's like, oh, those poor people. Like, let's start a GoFundMe and raise a couple of $100,000. But if it's not a dog, it's almost always a dog, but when on the rare occasion it's something else, like those snake people in Orlando, the Orlando city attorney literally crucified them. 12 years for each parent, right? They did not screw around. Right. But of course, if that had been a dog, you juxtapose that to say the Bernard case, like, ooh, those poor people, they not only lost their children, but their precious dogs, too. Fido and Rover had to get put down. It's so sad. It's like, it just makes you want to slam a car door into your head, the double standard. But pursuant to that, similar to that, here's something else. Okay. I don't know if who's heard of this person. There was I think it was a Netflix miniseries. I believe it's called The Dropout. I saw it. It's actually very good, right? And it was a sort of a biodrama of this person, this Elizabeth Holmes. Now, to fast forward a little bit, she is currently serving 11 and a half years in prison for fraud. What was the nature of the fraud? Well, what she did was she started this biotech company called Theranos, okay? And apparently what it was a revolutionary device. It was a blood testing machine that she and her peers had developed. And the advantage of it was, supposedly, here was the claim, that typically when you get blood tests, like I get blood tests a couple of times a year, and they typically, they have to draw a few vials, like maybe a couple of ounces of blood to get, a sample size sufficient to fulfill the test, right? She said supposedly this machine of hers could test for whatever 200 different things based on a very, very small sample size, like just a finger prick, kind of like the diabetics use. Like you can test blood sugar with a drop of blood. So she made this claim, but the thing was, which all along it never really worked, because the sample sizes were too small. They were never really able to develop the device properly. Like it never really worked. But all along she's hiding this, right? Now, there's a couple of things going on here. There's a couple of big problems. So her company actually went to a $9 billion valuation. Okay. So, but then, when the fraud was revealed, right, the estimate, Forbes revised the estimate to zero, right? So what happened was she was tried actually in a couple of things. One was she was tried for securities fraud because the whole, at least the claim was by the prosecutors, she was doing this in an attempt to pump the stock price, right? So all these claims were made to pump the stock price. So it was a get-rich-quick scheme. But she was also prosecuted for, injuring, patients. Because again, similar to these alert dogs, this is a very serious matter. Like a botched blood test can get somebody killed, right? Just like with the the blood sugar test, right? How you react to a low blood sugar event is completely different than how you react to a high blood sugar event, right? If you got high blood sugar, you want insulin. If you got low blood sugar, you want to eat carbohydrates. So anyway, she defrauded investors, and that was really the substance of the complaint. It was mostly, her prosecution was mostly done on the basis of financial fraud. It's a securities violation. She was indicted. But here's the interesting though, too. She was convicted of defrauding investors, but was acquitted of defrauding patients. That's what's kind of interesting here was she was acquitted of defrauding patients. So basically it seems like the investors were protected, but the patients were not. But what's interesting here is you have the same kind of thing. I mean, this is very different because when you get into dogs, you have the whole, mutt worship culture is part of it. But yeah, she wound up, based on this fraud of hers, she got 11 and a quarter years in prison starting May 30th, right? And they're also fined, Balwani was her business partner, fined $452 million to be paid to the victims of the fraud. So this is really interesting. So this is like the same, I think, okay, what is sort of similarly situated? But apparently, she was acquitted of defrauding patients, but she was prosecuted for it. I guess maybe the reason they did this was it was like, look, she wasn't really setting out to hurt people. She just wanted to make money. But in any case, she wound up going to prison for this fraud. So this is a really interesting case. What I'm getting at is this is the same kind of thing. You have essentially a bogus claim being made in regards to medical equipment. And this person goes to jail, but it seems like nobody ever goes. Well, actually, there have been some lawsuits against the service dog fraudsters. But I mean, if a fake service dog gets somebody killed, that would be a wrongful death or even a negligent homicide, I would think.
Yeah, especially if they're bringing them into an area that dogs simply have no business being in.
Oh, sure. Well, that, it could be a bystander, but even the handler themselves, like they're sold, right? So it's like, let's say the woman is this article, let's say, or either this woman or this other one died as a result of like a failed alert. Like, who's accountable for that? You also have the other problems too. Yeah, they take the dog to Walmart and it triggers like a fatal allergic reaction in a staff member or another customer. That's really the whole other problem with this thing. But even with the handler itself, who's accountable for these service dog fails? Like, it seems like there's a big product liability issue here that's not seriously being addressed. Actually, I was reading is similar. I was a while back. I don't have it up, but I think it was in Australia, and I related my experience with a guide dog fail, but a guide dog for the blind walked their handler right out into traffic because they're supposed to be trained, like
Yes.
if it's a red light, stop, don't go into the street, don't go on green. I think, but dogs are colorblind, I think. But in any case, yeah, walked the person right in front of a car, bam, killed him. Who's accountable for that?
The trainer. Although, what if it's the owner themselves that trained their service mutt?
Well, that's the other thing, yeah.
I remember reading about that though. Like I'm sure they'll try to write it off as something else, like, oh, it's a malfunction. It's like, well, this is a malfunction that any untrained dog can make. So why do you have to use the one thing that requires training on
Yeah.
these tasks?
And also, like I said too, is in here, it's like really your best case is it works 80% of the time.
Right.
Which is not good. That does not meet the standards for medical equipment or really anything. I mean, in most industries, the standards are really pretty much any other industry. The standards are way higher. And if you go back to this person and these machines she developed, I mean, they weren't wrong all the time. I never really got into that. The effectiveness of her devices. I don't think they weren't wrong 100% of the time, right? So yeah. So, but it's the same kind of thing. But you know how it's handled differently. It's like because Fido can do no wrong, so it's all good, right? Interesting stuff. I wanted to move on, unless you had some more thoughts on this. I wanted to move on, probably to at least one other topic.
I think I said everything I needed to.
Yeah, I think we're good for now. It's a good topic, though. And again, I just like to say again, particularly folks listening, that, debunking service dogs would be a huge propaganda win for our side, right? Because that's the service dogs are used. They're a very, very important component to the Mutt Matrix propaganda stack. Everybody, and I'll link this in the video description. I think everybody should read this. And if you're ever in a conversation with somebody, say, "Oh, I'm a service dog," it's like service dogs are a scam. They're a scam. It's probably one of the biggest scams ever, like foisted on the public. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, repeat offenders. This is another interesting case involving a dog attack. So this is the second person attacked by pit bulls as neighbors fear going outside. And this is a problem right here. Everybody focuses on the bad outcomes. And I guess this is a bit graphic. I may have to cover this up. This is a bad, really nasty injury being showed here. But so everybody focuses on the actual bad outcomes, like the injuries or the deaths. But it's not just that. It's all these sort of third parties that these murder mutts put neighborhoods on lockdowns. Like mine, for example, every couple of years we have the same problem. Somebody moves in with a bunch of pit bulls or Rottweilers. They run the neighborhood. They kill other pets. They attack people. They destroy property. And we have to agitate for months to get the problem solved. But meanwhile, yeah, the neighborhood is on lockdown. I've had people tell me, it's like, you know what? I don't even want to, I drive home. I don't even want to get out of the car. It's terrible. Human beings can't live like this. This is literally, it's a horror movie scenario. So, like I said, I'll probably cover up this injury, but moving along. So this happened. Okay, so this person moved in lot 87. So she was taking the trash out and she was attacked from behind by a pit bull. owned by Harley Jones in the unprovoked attack. But I thought dogs don't attack unprovoked. He came up and started to rip my legs. The owner arrived and began beating the dog on the head. So she immediately called 911 and was treated for including numerous stitches. So the dog warden was called and showed up on the following Tuesday. So here you've got a really dangerous situation. And it's like, yeah, I'll see you next Tuesday. Imagine calling the bomb squad. Right? You got a bundle of dynamite with like a timer on top. You call the bomb squad and you say, yeah, we got ourselves a bomb here. And they're like, yeah, how about next Tuesday at 4? Does that work? Like, is that okay? They don't handle, because people just don't see this as being everybody's been brainwashed into thinking a dog is never wrong, right? They're thinking, okay, this person was attacked, so she said, well, either she made it up, it's a hoax, or she deserved it for some reason, right? They don't take this stuff seriously. Now, this gets more interesting. So she filled out a dangerous dog report, and the 8-year-old pit bull was placed on quarantine for 10 days. Oh, this is great. At the Harley Jones is the owner. So basically, they say, look, as punishment, you have to keep this dog. Basically, you just get to keep the dog. That's the punishment, right? So the dog had to be kept inside the residence or kept on a lead outside at the residence. And so basically, like, they're saying, okay, you can keep your dog, but you have to have it on a leash when it's outside, which is already the law, right? So the punishment is, or the reaction is, look, just keep doing what you're doing, okay? You're fine. Now, to say the least, Evelyn was not pleased, especially when she discovered that this was not the first attack the pit bull had unleashed on park residents. Neighbors are scared to come out of their homes. You don't say. Okay. And it says she's lucky the teeth didn't puncture her popliteal artery. Yeah, I guess she was lucky, wasn't she? Yeah, I guess you're lucky that the bomb wasn't set to go off until Wednesday. So it's like you just lucked out. You didn't get blown up. So it's all good. It's all good. So, commented the animal control officer. So the thing is, so this dog is now a 2-time loser, because on May 14th earlier, it was Mother's Day, and Shelley Fisher approached the dog owner's residence and noted the grass was tall and unkempt. Yeah, so basically you've got a dog nutter living in squalor. How cliche is that? As she walked up the ramp leading to the steps of her neighbor, she too was attacked from behind by the very same pit bull. Now they're probably going to claim, oh, you were trespassing. Like, you set 1 foot on the dog owner's property, that's justification for deletion. So he lunged at me and then I ran. So she received 22 puncture wounds from the attack. Okay, now this is even better. Unfortunately, Fisher discovered the dog had not received its rabies shots, and she had to go through the series of rabies and a tetanus shots. Those are very, very painful and expensive, and often not covered by insurance. So this is the first event back in May. So the dog owner was required to get the dog vaccinated and provide proof. So basically the only thing is that the punishment is they just have to do what they should have done in the first place. Oh, your rabid dog is like running around attacking people. The dog did not have rabies, but it could have. Yeah, it could have. It's running around attacking people. You know what? We're going to throw the book at you, man. You got to get that dog a rabies shot. That's what you got to do. It's just appalling. It's sickening that these people are allowed to get away with this stuff. This dog, the first time this dog should have been put down and the owner arrested for reckless endangerment and assault. Period. Like, but they just coddle the hell out of these people. Okay, so the dog is still there. This is after 2 attacks, sending people to the hospital. The first one requiring, a full rabies series of treatments. There's a lot of elderly people here. I think they are carrying mace. She noted that Jones never showed up at her residence to check on her, offer an apology. Well, of course not. Not surprising. No other action was taken by the town. She believes that the park owners, the landlords, are trying to get the dog owner evicted. Well, that would help. Okay. Oh, this is where it gets really good. This is almost comic. So anyway, the town supervisor stated he personally went and assured the Times that Harley Jones is scheduled to appear before the justice for a hearing to determine if the dog should be dangerous. Gee, you think?
Idiots.
It is. They're so stupid. Like, what are they going to have? Like, yeah, physicists, like, hold a hearing to determine, if the earth is round or something. I mean, it's just, or if gravity is real. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. They wonder, like, why do we have all these dog attacks? Well, because the people are allowed to do these things over and over and over again. And you take a case like this, like one case I blogged about extensively last decade. I mentioned him on voice chats, but it's always good to mention again. You had a case very, very similar to this, but where a man named Roy McSweeney was killed by his neighbor's pit bulls. But guess what? Those dogs were already, that was their 3rd strike, were already a 2-time losers like this one. That's why the situation, no wonder. So if this dog goes on to kill somebody, they're going to be like, gee, how'd that happen? Yeah, how indeed. Unbelievable. Oh, yeah, I wanted to cover that up. Yeah, it was really nasty wound picture in there. I'll probably get a strike if I don't. That's why I said, well, I like to record these things beforehand, because if there's something in it that I don't want shown or something said that probably shouldn't have been said, I can edit it out later. Unreal.
These people wonder why we all hate them and make fun of them constantly.
Yeah. And it's not just the dogs and the owners themselves, but it's authorities. And that's where my handle came from, animal uncontrol. It's a it's a reference to the inaction of authorities, because this is another animal uncontrol fail, where you have a dog that's not just behaving dangerously, but has badly injured multiple people. It's like, I know, let's have a hearing to see if the dog is dangerous. Yuck, yuck, yuck. They're totally useless. Well, they're totally useless when it comes to protecting us from the dog. And it's another point I like to make often is there's very little protection from this thing, but there is a lot for it. Like if somebody in that community were to say shoot the dog or poison it, the authorities would be all over it, guaranteed. There'd be like a police investigation.
That person would probably go to prison too.
Probably if they caught him, sure, absolutely. And that's ridiculous. And some people, we talk about this when people look for solutions. They say, well, first, what's the nature of the problem? And then you say, okay, what to do about it? And, it's anarcho-tyranny, where, like I said, there's very little to no protection from the thing, but there's a lot of protection for it. So there's a couple of ways you could approach that. Like the big government solution is to just come down on the dog owners like a ton of bricks. But the response to that often is it's like, well, they say a couple of things. They say, going after the dog or the owner after the fact doesn't accomplish anything, because it doesn't undo the harm. Well, sure, but that's sophistry. I mean, it's technically true, but it doesn't matter. One thing it does is it prevents any future harm. Like you don't have the subsequent victims, right? Like if they'd killed this mutt and jailed the owner after the first attack, the second owner would not have been attacked, right? So we're spared that much at least. The other thing they claim is that, well, it's too expensive. I remember too, when Colleen and I were discussing, enforcement of BSL laws. And there's another complaint about that. It's like, well, banning pit bulls is too expensive, they say. Right? Because if they do what I want, it's like, okay, what's the penalty for harboring an illegal pit bull? I say prison. Right? I say, well, who's going to pay for it? Well, you could make, animal control can be revenue neutral, but sure, you pay for it, you tax them, you charge them fees, and you fine them. Right. But really what they're saying is that, yeah, protecting the public from these things, whether it's a breed in general or known, individual offenders, it's just not a priority. It's just not something they care to do. Right. Human safety, human quality of life, because what's being expressed here, right? They fear going, the neighborhood's on lockdown, like because of a dog, right? People can't live like that. They shouldn't have to live like that. It's the whole scenario is criminal. But so the thing is, they say that, like, okay, cracking down on these people it's too expensive. They say it's too much money. But what we just discussed, where do okay, if somebody shoots that dog, you're right, they're going to arrest them, they're going to prosecute them, they're going to incarcerate them. Where does the money for that come from? If the enforcement state is so broke, but that comes down to priorities, because dog nutters, control a lot of these positions of authorities. And they say, yeah, there's no protection from the thing, but there's a lot for it, because the priority is protecting the dog. It's a dog's first, paradigm. It's a dog's first mentality. So that's where the resources go. But I say, you know what? One thing you could do, what's a small government solution, is just remove the protections. Just say, oh, call comes in, oh, your dog got shot. Well, you know what? Maybe you should have trained your dog not to be in front of a gun when it goes off. There's probably just a tragic accident. It couldn't have been prevented, And moreover, look, gun people, shoot things. It's what they do, right? They're gun nuts who hate dogs, and shooting dogs is what they do. And you just need to learn to live with them, and that's just it. And just tell them, what would they tell you or I if we got attacked by a dog? Call a lawyer. Why not just tell them that? Tell them, you know what, if you feel that your rights have been violated, the dog owner, I mean, okay, you turned your dog loose to attack people and somebody shot it. You know what? If you feel like your rights have been violated, call a lawyer. But you know what? That's not, protecting these things, particularly at the level that they're protected at now, is really not a matter for authorities, right? Our government should not be protecting these things at that level. There was a while back, I did one of my monologues, I called it Unequal Protection. The folks can look that up. And I did a deep dive into multiple cases where they weren't necessarily self-defense cases. I think one of them was, but they're just cases where, somebody shot a dog or killed a dog. I think it was one man in, I believe it was Louisiana, strangled his aunt's dog to death and got 10 years in prison. And I'm thinking, where's the money for that going to come from? Right. But the thing is, they do that because, protecting these things is a priority, and that needs to change. So, people are living even in my neighborhood, we had those 3 murder mutts terrorizing the neighborhood. People were saying, well, don't people in your neighborhood own guns? It's like, yeah, they do. And I'm one of them. And in fact, I have, scoped rifles. I could take those mutts out at 250 yards, no problem. Consider it done. Easy. But, I don't do it because, spending the next 5 years, in the Gray Bar Hotel is not one of my life goals. It's not part of the plan. So, yeah, I just, I take steps to protect myself, but I don't do anything unless I'm actually attacked. So.
And how can a situation like that not be made, like that argument should be made in self-defense? So why is that not justified in a court setting? Like they think you just shot a free roaming murder mutt because you thought it was going to be fun. Like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm gonna shoot a dog today. That sounds like a good plan.
Well, even that, it's like, why well, you could say that. It's like, okay, I could say hypothetically speaking, you know what? This conversation is pissing me off so much. I'm just going to I'm going to walk out of here and I'm going to kill the first dog I see, regardless of what it's doing. Okay. Now, a lot of people, even people on our side, would say, okay, that's criminal, but is it? Like,
No.
why are they protecting these things so much? Because if you juxtapose it again with the double standards, I mean, I can shoot all the wild hogs I want. So
You can
why
just,
can't I shoot? I mean, it's only a one letter difference, like HOG versus DOG. It's like, the difference is that dogs are they're protected at or above the level of human beings, which is ridiculous. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to forget even about, well, you could argue it's sort of preemptive self-defense, because if you've got dogs at large that have been behaving dangerously, right, even if it's not actually attacking somebody, you could say, look, they need to go, right? And they do that with wildlife too. Like if a bear attacks somebody, they kill it. It's
and the
killed.
cubs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting too. Yeah, they do that also. There is a case here in Florida where an alligator, ironically, it killed an elderly woman walking her dog. And so the alligator was euthanized, but not only that, but all the alligators, it was like a big lake, they took out all of them, all the alligators, and put them down. And I thought that was interesting. Imagine if they handled that. It's like, okay, if a pit bull kills somebody or even badly injures somebody, not only are we going to kill that pit bull, but every pit bull for a 1/4 mile radius. We're going to go door to door and youth them all.
That'd be
Imagine
awesome.
Yeah, but imagine if that happened. But going back to, like I said, killing the things, even if you talk about it, technically, just shooting random dogs is illegal as hell. But it raises a question, like, should it be? Because they keep saying that, like, well, it doesn't undo the harm. That's what they say, like, when a dog attacks a person. Oh, don't youth the dog or arresting owner. It doesn't undo the harm, which, again, is technically true. It's sophistry, but it's still a bullshit argument. Well, I'm going to go kill the first dog I see. Is arresting me going to bring the dog back to life? No. So why do it? And besides, it's like, you don't want your tax money prosecuting me, do you? Well, they do. They think that is a good use of taxpayer money. So yeah, all our social priorities are completely screwed up. That needs to change. It needs to be the opposite. There needs to be more protection from the thing and less for it. Yep, fun never stops. I don't know if you had any more thoughts on this. We're coming up on an hour and a half. Do you have any other topics you wanted to cover?
Not really. I feel like we discussed a lot just in this
Yeah,
single recording.
it was very, yeah, sorry. So it was very productive. There was, I had another one. There was some herding dog fails. I might have gone into that instead of this, maybe if Sheepy had joined, but
Hmm.
maybe next time if she joins, we'll talk about that, because there was a case where it was actually at a dog show. A border collie basically mauled a judge.
Jeez.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that some. And also things like herding dogs and livestock stock guardian dogs and fails and things like that. But because that's a topic interesting. Well, it's interesting to everybody, including her. But maybe I'll save that for the next time she joins. So, in any case, all right, I'll wrap it up. So, this is Animal Uncontrol, and as always, people first. Thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.